Okay, so this is the gymnastics competition program. I have the input-output stream, IO manip, and string libraries. So starting at the top of the main function, I have two constant variables. One is a string called invalid, and I set this equal to a user-friendly phrase to tell the user their input is invalid and to try again. The second one is a double of score average, and I set this to 3 because when there's 5 judges, it'll subtract 2 scores, the lowest and the highest. So it'll always get to 3 different scores as the average. I have two character variables. This one's called run program, and it gets set to y at the very start of the program. So the do while loop will work properly. And this is what will be used to determine if the user wants to run the program again. And the other one is called menu choice, and this is what the user will input when they have the selection menu at the start of the program. So I have three integer variables. The first one is the amount of judges, and the second one is the maximum amount of contestants that the user can enter, and the third one is the amount of contestants entered by the user. I have one string variable called name for each contestant's name, and then I have 5 double variables: the score, the highest score, the lowest score, the total score from all the judges, and a contestant's average score. And since these all do math together, I chose to make them the same data type. So next is just a cout statement that says, "Welcome to the gymnastics competition program." Then the entire program is pretty much in a do-while loop. It starts by displaying to the user a menu, and then a cin statement to get the user's menu choice. And here I have a while loop to check for invalid input. So if the user does not enter 1 and 2 and 3, then it'll display the string constant invalid, then allow the user to enter their choice again. And this is pretty much the same pattern that's used throughout the program for checking invalid input. So then I have if-else statements. The first condition is if the menu choice is 1, then set the judge amount to 3. And if the contestant max number, and then set the contestant max number to 20. And then if the menu choice is 2, then the judge amount will be 5 and the contestant max will be 50. If neither of these two options are chosen, then that only means that they chose option 3, which will run a break statement to exit the while loop. So then the user is prompted to enter the amount of contestants, and it'll be displayed depending on what the contestant maximum is. So if it's 3 judges, it'll say 20. If it's 5 judges, it'll say 50. And here we have another while loop checking invalid input. And in this case, if it's outside the boundaries, then it'll just ask the user to try again. So here we have an outer for loop where we can create a counting variable called I set to 0. And we check if I has less than the contestant amount, and then increment by 1 every time the for loop runs. Okay, so at the start of the outer for loop, we set total score to 0, highest to 0, and lowest to 10. And here I put a cin.ignore function so that we can properly get the contestant's full name without causing an error from any previous input. I then prompt the user to enter the name for that contestant, whichever number I currently is plus 1. And then I use a getLine function so that I can get the contestant's full name. Okay, so here I have the start of an inner for loop utilizing j as the counting variable. In this case, it'll run for however many times judge amount is equivalent to, so it'll either go 3 times or 5 times. So for each judge, we prompt the user to enter a score of 0 through 10 for that number judge, and then we have an invalid input checking with a while loop right after. Now, here is where we detect if the score is less than whatever the current lowest score is set to. Then it'll assign the lowest score as that specific score, and there will be a new lowest score. And this also goes for the highest score, so if the current score is greater than the highest score, then the highest score will be assigned to this score. And you'll notice that I have comments here indicating that this does in fact happen whether there are 3 judges or 5 judges. However, it'll affect the final outcome because there's an if statement later on checking if the judge amount is 5, which we'll see later. So then we end this inner for loop with adding the entered score to the total score. After the inner loop finishes running and has added up all the judges' scores, I have a cout statement to only show the I have a cout statement to show the 2 decimal places after a decimal point using fixed and set precision 2. Now, here's where I check whether or not the judge amount was assigned to 5. And I use this specific condition because it's just shorter than checking if menu choice equals 2. So if the judge amount is 5, then we take the lowest and highest scores, combine them, and then subtract them from the total score. I also have a cout statement here to tell the user that the lowest and highest scores have been removed, and it shows what they are. So after that, I calculate the average score by dividing total score by score average, which again is a constant containing 3, since the average score will always be from 3 different scores. And then right here, I display the contestant's name and their average score. So now we get to the outside for the outer for loop, which means all the contestants have had their scores entered and calculated. Here I prompt the user if they want to run a program again with a Y or an N, meaning yes or no. The user enters their choice, and then we have another while loop to detect invalid input from the user. And in the condition, I use the 2 upper functions since it makes it shorter to check if it's a capital Y and capital N rather than making 4 different conditions. And so here we get to the end of the do while loop, and here's the condition here the condition is to check if the user entered Y for run program. If they entered N, then the do while loop will be exited. And then, yeah, here we reach the end of the program with a statement that just says, "Thank you for using the program."